Hey y'all. Today it's Starvo versus Viserai, and I'm on the Starvo side this time because for a few embarrassing moments, I did consider taking Starvo to ProQuest.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
So I figured let me get some reps in with the deck just in case. I also know that enemy and all that. And also my opponent wanted to test against Starvo. In particular, they wanted to try the aggro Viserai plan to Starvo. Because for a while it was theorized that because Starvo blocks so poorly, maybe aggro is a way to go into it. So yeah, let's see how the game goes. My opponent won the die roll, they chose to go first. You don't want to let Starvo go first, they get the arsenal, helps them get the crown, become more consistent with the fusing, so yeah. Chose to go first, they pitch 2 reds to the grass, make a rune chant. And then they just pass the turn. Yep, they don't let me filter. And so we've drawn 2 Earth and 2 Lightning cards. I am running the, I don't know, the Captain Planet list, I guess. This game was played quite early on as the Starvo decks were still being tuned. So I'm sure there's better Starvo decks out there right now, but this was the one I was using. Yeah, so my best play is just come in with the Autumn's Touch. You know, it's weird. Every time I'm against a Starvo and they go first, or, you know, I don't let them filter and they're going second, they somehow always have the fuse anyway. So this was a bit disappointing that I didn't get it. Okay, then my opponent blocks 3. Takes 4 of it. Then I arsenal the card that doesn't block. Yep. Just in case I am forced to block out. Yeah. So we draw up and we have, what is, again, 2 lightning and 2 earth. We need an ice card to be able to fuse Bravo. They play a red Morven Skies and come in with a meet and greet. So red Morven Skies is kind of scary. Letting this hit is basically an extra 3 damage just from Morven Skies. Because then there's also meet and greet's hit ability, which is another 1 rune chant. So, you know, letting this hit is basically letting them have an extra 4 damage, which is not what I want to do. So we go ahead and crown. And we do draw an ice card, so that's very nice. Now we know we have the Bravo Fuse. Use the 1 floating to block the rune chant. And then all of Starvo's cards block for 2, so I'm forced to use equipment here. I can't just put 1 card in front of it and let the crown take it. And let the crown, you know, hit the breakpoint. I need to either use 2 cards or 1 card in equipment. And then, yeah, the reason I didn't use the shield was because they were floating 2, so they could still Rosetta, even if I give them a Frostbite. So, yeah, didn't want to use the shield there. Still have 1 floating, so that stops the rune chant. And I think I just take 3 here. Because I still have the 1 damage prevention from Crown. Cool. And this way we get to Starvo Fuse on our turn. And also, yeah, remember the Tunic. And then we just go Evergreen for 9, Dominate, go again. Cool. Opponent takes 6 here. And now we have an option of arsenaling this Frostfang or just coming in with a hammer. So arsenaling it means, you know, we get the, we potentially get a more consistent fuse for Starvo next turn. But since we are against an aggro Viserai, I kind of do want to tax them. Aggro Viserai is very, very sensitive to taxing effects. So I want to either force some equipment out of them or, you know, threaten the Frostbite. And the thing about getting equipment from them early from hammer hits means that they don't have the equipment later for like Fused Oak and Old or a Crippling Crush. So, yeah. Okay, then my opponent gives me 2 cards from that. So that's nice. That basically means they don't have a next turn. There's Arsenal. And we draw up, and we don't have a fuse, but we do have a Crippling Crush. So this is Yeah, pretty straightforward. We take up Tunic on our turn, and then we just pitch our 2 blues and the Tunic to play a Crippling Crush. We still get our Arsenal, and we're still threatening a Crippling Crush, so... Yep. Cool. Then my opponent blocks 8, including a piece of equipment, so I take 3 and avoid the crush effect. And we draw into this hand. No Starvo Fuse again, but we are able to fuse his Oakenold because we have an Earth and Ice card. Like we can pitch a card for it, and then also just fuse it with another Earth and Ice card. So that part's nice. Okay, my opponent does a Mordred Tide. Then a Gloom Veil. So this Gloom Veil is coming in for the 3 rune chance, and it creates 2 rune chance on the back and 4 physical. But my opponent doesn't have any cards remaining, so I don't need to worry about a reset after. So this is basically just 7 damage. So I could consider, what I'm considering right now is pitching for Crown. That has a potential very high upside if I draw a lightning card. Well, rather, if I draw a blue lightning card, then I can Starvo ability and pitch the blue lightning card and do a fused Oakenold. But it has a potentially really bad downside where if I draw a red non-earth or non-ice card, then not only do I not get the Starvo trigger, I won't be able to fuse Oakenold either. So ultimately, I just decide to not take the risk and just take the 7 damage. Cool. And then our turn, it's just Oakenold, naturally fused. So this is 9 dominate, and yeah, it's like I said earlier, once you get, once you batter their equipment a bit, now my opponent has no way to block out the Oakenold completely, unless they have defense reactions, but since they aggro Viserai, they probably don't. So, with the equipment, they can only block 5, and then 1 more card from hand is at most 3. So the Oakenold is going to hit. Yep, so my opponent makes a decision to not waste their equipment since they can't prevent the on-hit anyway, which makes sense. Use their life total as a resource there. And I'm rolling to see which card they get to keep. The other 2 go to the bottom. And we still keep an ice and an earth card in our hand, and it's been a while since we've seen a lightning card. So we can expect to see one, and yep, we do. So we take up Tunic and then trigger Bravo. And so we could just come in with this yellow Autumn's Touch and follow up with an Ice Hammer. But we do have an Out of War in Arsenal. So, and since we've already triggered Bravo, now we can like get rid of like this Heaven's Claws, which is kind of useless. So it's a pretty bad card. So we can just like banish away this Heaven's Claws to Out of War and hopefully draw something much better. If not, we still have the Autumn's Touch line because we still are holding onto another blue. So yeah. So Out of War, I choose +1 to all my attacks this turn and banish and draw 2. And then we draw into Crippling Crush, which is kind of just like the best thing we could have drawn. Yeah, I guess Oakenold is the other one, but yeah. So now we just pitch for a total of 7 and come with a Crippling Crush, which is now coming in for 14 dominate and go again. Although I guess we can make use of the go again this turn, but still 14 dominate Crippling Crush is just kind of bonkers. Yeah. Cool, so my opponent puts 7 block in front of this. And they take 7 and still get crushed, because that's how this hero works apparently. So cool, so again, I'm just rolling to see what they get to keep. And we still get to end the turn with an arsenal. So, yeah. Cool. On our turn, we Tunic. And we did draw Bravo Fuse this time. The Landing Eyes on Earth card. I suppose it actually was a mistake to show the Winter's Bite, since I actually planned to play the Winter's Bite this turn. Yeah. So there's an option to aggressively crown here to try and find a better attack. But since I already have a pretty good red attack in my arsenal, I decided to just, use that. So Evergreen's coming in for 9. Dominate, go again, of course. Yep, opponent blocks 3, takes 6 of it. And then since I just need to pitch a Frostfang to get an Icy Hammer, I go ahead and just use the Winter's Bite. Then I'll still end with an arsenal. Okay, force my opponent's whole hand, because if they get a Frostbite, they couldn't have done anything, so they might as well just save the equipment and go ahead and block it out. Cool, and then we draw up and we are missing a lightning card again to fuse. And since this time Arsenal's like just a blue, I think at the end of my opponent's turn, I decide to crown, use off the Tunic to try and find something. Get a Channel Lake Frigid, so it's yet another ice card. So not amazing, but I mean my opponent's at 8 at this point, so yeah, so we are, obviously very firmly ahead. And also the sort of our, quote unquote off turn by not triggering Starvo is somewhat offset by the fact that we can actually play Channel Lake Frigid, which means it's hard for opponent to swing back tempo anyway, despite us having an off turn. So yeah. Okay, so we start with a Channel Lake Frigid. So yeah, since we don't have go again on our attack this turn, yeah. Just go with the channel and after Elam's Touch for 7. Cool, and then my opponent blocks... they block the full 7, using 2 more pieces of equipment. I guess at this point they've decided that if I do manage to get a big dominant attack off, they've probably lost anyway. So they might as well just use the equipment. So I go ahead and put my flow counter on the channel. And they are trying to pay 2 into this Sonata, but it costs them 3 because of the channel. And then they do get the perfect split. They get 2 attacks and 2 non-attacks. But looking at our side, we have found one of our pulses. So we actually can trigger Starvo and also just do a fused Oakanold. So, and since we had such a healthy life total, we just don't need to care about any damage that's coming our way this turn. Go ahead and take 2. Yep, and then my opponent plays that Shrill that they just got, costs them the full 3. And it's coming in for a total of 7 because of the 2 rune chants. So yeah, like I said, doesn't we just don't care about damage at this point. Yep, Starvo turn, go ahead and trigger Starvo. Yep. And then go ahead and Oakenroll and fuse it with the Pulse. So now Oakenroll's coming in for 11, dominate, go again. And then my opponent blocks out 4. So, yep, and then I respond before the damage and out of war to make it 1 more damage, so it's the perfect lethal. And yeah, and then we call it GG there. So yeah, that was the game. To be honest, there's not much of a replay analysis to do there. This deck really more or less plays itself. Yeah, so it's not entirely surprising that we've had a fair number of like newer players to the game be able to like pick this deck up and like, you know, perform well at like the Pro Quest and stuff. Yeah, so yeah, I mean the deck exists. And I guess typically, like, sort of, if we want to comment on the game a little more on the aggro game plan of my opponent, I think typically that's kind of what happens if you try to aggro into Starvo. You know, they can just take a bunch of damage and they will hit you back with disruption. And then if you're an aggro deck, you really hate disruption, like typically. So you get disrupted and it's really hard for you to get tempo back again because now they'll have like 5-card hands. So yeah, so I don't think aggro is the plan into Starvo. And yeah, so that was the game. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed it.